Part 2, using sources in your paper. Now, one of the main ways of using sources is to use what are called templates. So sources should never just be plopped down into the middle of the paper. They always need to be introduced and explained. So here are some examples of some templates that can be used to help you. So in our article, X maintains that, and then you would give the quote or a summary from your paper. You could also say, in making this comment, X argues that blank. These conclusions, which X discusses in blank, you give the title of the article, add weight to the argument that blank. Now, I've given you some additional templates like this that you can use in our worksheet right here. So I encourage you to look at this link and use some of these templates within your essay writing. Now, let's look at some examples of these templates in practice. Okay, so this is from Blow's article. So right up here, we see in April, the New York Times. Right there, that's him following one of these templates and introducing the source. Then he says, extended this line of reporting, pointing out nationally there are 1.5 million black men missing. So this is someone else's words. This is someone else's idea or fact, and he's stating where he got that fact from. Then he kind of repeats this template as the paper put it. All right, so that's introducing then where he's getting this quote, and we can see the quotation marks right here, and then where they end. So all of this in between is someone else's words that he's borrowing. And then he cites where he got it, because up here he just says the paper, but the paper, that's not clear for the reader. So he gives a citation at the end. So you can either give citations kind of right before or at the end of your information. And then afterwards, he kind of interprets it and again states someone else's facts a little bit right after that quote. Now, here's another example. So this one kind of dealt with a quote. This one deals a little bit more with summarizing. So Blow, in this case, is giving his own thoughts. Now to the methodology of blackmail dereliction as dads. While it is true that black parents are less likely to marry, he kind of goes on. And then he stops and he introduces a source to back up what he's saying. In fact, a CDC report issued in December 2013. Right? And then he paraphrases or kind of summarizes what this report said. Right, so there's no quotation marks. And then, because he just said CDC report, he wants to give the specific one, he wants to cite it, he provides the citation at the end to direct the reader to his work cited. Right, so we see Jones here, and Jones and Mosher, there's two authors. So this is how the reader knows which source he's referring to. If he just said the CDC report, the reader would not necessarily know how to find it because they wouldn't know to look under Jones in the work cited. All right, so that's kind of an important concept to keep in mind when doing your citations, and it's the most common mistake I see students make. They'll say the website, but they don't realize that the website is buried way at the end of the citation, and it's not what the reader will be looking under. So make sure that you always, in your citation, refer to what comes first in the works cited citation, which is usually the author's last name. All right, now to give you some practice with incorporating sources into your writing, you're going to have an exercise due Thursday, which asks you to take one of your sources and take maybe a passage from it and practice giving a quote, a paraphrase of that same passage, and a summary. Okay, and this is to help you see too how you can take the same information and use it in different ways based upon how you want to use it in your essay. What you're doing here, you can even use this in your paper. So take this as you're starting your drafting process for the supporting a position with sources essay. Now, if you want, you can go ahead and pause the video and complete this exercise, and you can find it on page 487 through 488 in Bedford in chapter 29, or you can finish watching through for the rest of the video. Oh, actually, I do have one source that will really help you with this exercise. If you go to the quick research guide at the back of our book and go to the D section, you'll find checklists for the quotations to make sure you've done it right, checklist for paraphrase to make sure you've done it right, and checklist for summary to make sure you've done it right. So these would be very helpful for you for this exercise and also when writing your essay. So if you want, go ahead, pause the video, go do that exercise and come back, or you can just watch through to the end of the video. Now, I do want to say a quick word on citations and why they are so important, okay? So, what are citations? Basically, they just show the reader where you got your information, okay? They are used whenever a writer needs to show where they got specific words or ideas, and this is very important. A lot of students overlook this one, but if you don't tell someone where you got an idea or a concept, that itself is plagiarism. And sometimes it's the most common form of plagiarism that I see from students. Okay, and it's also why your paraphrases and your summaries need to be cited. It's not just direct words that you use, but ideas. Okay, why are citations important? Basically, for ethical reasons. It's kind of considered theft when you take someone else's ideas or concepts and you don't give them credit. You don't point back to them and say, this is where I got this. Okay, so in writing, we call this plagiarism. Now, what are the consequences of plagiarism? Well, it can range from anything between getting a 0 on the assignment, failing a course, expulsion from a university. I've even had a case with one school when I was attending where the student had their degree revoked. It came out a couple years later that they had plagiarized kind of their final projects and stuff like that, and so the university revoked the degrees. In real world, journalism, journalists and writers will sometimes face court penalties, lawsuits, over plagiarized work. So there are very severe consequences and legal consequences for plagiarizing. So make sure you practice good habits with your writing now of keeping track of where you got ideas so that in the future you don't find yourself in an awkward situation. Now, while all of that sounds real scary about citations, they're really kind of easy. All right, and I'm going to give you a way to think about them so they're not overwhelming. Citations just follow established rules and formats set by associations who create them. So some of the most common associations are MLA, APA, and Chicago. There are other ones out there. Nursing students usually will have, the Nursing Association has their own, the Engineering Association has their own citation formats, but MLA, APA, and Chicago are the most common ones you will encounter in college. Now, what I say with citations is if you can get this concept down, it won't matter what citation style you're asked to be used. You'll be able to adapt to any of them. Basically, think of citations like a math equation. So you remember in algebra how you had like x and you had to solve for it. And then you would have variables. You would plug in what information was needed for x, what information was needed for y, maybe in your geometry class. And it's the same thing with citation equations. When you're given an example, basically they're just giving you the equation and say plug in the variables. So the citation equation might look like this: author last name plus the page number. Okay, so what I would do is I say, all right, here's author's last name, Johnson, here's the page number 34, and voila, here is my citation. So this is why I say it doesn't matter what format you're using, just go find the citation equation and then plug in the variables. And it takes out a lot of kind of the guesswork and the fear around citations. So that's what I recommend doing. All right, the last thing I'm going to cover in this video is just your grammar exercises. And you have a couple exercises to complete which will help you with punctuating quotations and your citing. So those are exercises 33.1 in chapter 37, which is punctuation, and then exercise 35.2 using brackets and ellipses. I just want to show you which specific problems are due. So you can see in chapter 37, here's section 33 on the quotation marks. I do want you to read everything on the quotation marks, and then you'll get down to the exercise here. And just a reminder, the lettered problems are your practice problems that you can do on your own, but the ones I want you to submit are the numbered ones. So there's 3 right here, and then 2 on the next page. So make sure you don't miss these 2. Then when you come over to section 35, you're going to skip the parentheses. You don't need to really learn about parentheses, but I do want you to learn about brackets and ellipses because they can play special functions in quoting. And then you'll practice with the exercise 35.2 by completing these 3 numbered problems. And just also remember that you have the practice problems you can do here. Now for the practice problems, remember there's this section here, A Guide to the Handbook, it's really the last couple pages. It's kind of hard to find, but just kind of flip through the back of your book and you'll find it. And then if you go to where it says chapter 37 here, punctuation, and then go down to where it says 33, the quotation marks, and then the 35 here, it'll give you kind of the answers for those lettered problems to help you. So I just wanted to go over that. So one last thing, if you haven't already done it, read your sources and take your notes from them. And I have provided you a template to help you with that, which you can find here in our worksheet or also on MU Learn. So before you get into writing your essay, make sure and do this, and you should get on it because you'll have to turn in your supporting a position with sources essay this Sunday. Okay, so last thing is just go ahead and read the last couple of pages in chapter 11 on revising and editing, and that will lead you prepare you for the last step of the writing process for this essay.